Oh, all right, there we go. Hi, everybody. Want to do a quick audio check to see if everyone. Oh boy, the noise has started. Um, let's see. Yeah, the noise is going to happen for a little while, so there's that. I guess we'll hold on. All right. So I just want to do a quick audio check to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. Give me a wave, or if someone could just confirm in the Discord on the Longsword channel, or if the in this live chat. All good. Okay, cool. If he has the sounds, I think there are people parked out here that are going to be blasting music. Yeah, I can't really close my windows, otherwise it's going to get insanely hot in here. So we're going to have to put up with some background noise for a little bit. So hi everybody, welcome to Tuesday AMA. First things first, I guess we'll give this just a quick minute to see if we get let folks kind of trickle in. Just wanted to do a quick check-in. How is everyone doing? What have you been doing for practice this weekend? While I'm waiting for some responses, I'm gonna take a peek at some of the questions that have been kind of coming in. Okay, so so one of the things that I wanted to remind everyone about is that there is a fun project going on in the in the HEMA, or our little hemisphere, our little HEMA community. Um, there is we are doing our own reading of the Zettel. And the Zettel text itself, not yet the glosses. That is a future fun project. But I wanted to start a little smaller and do one that is the Zettel itself. So hold on, I'm pulling up the link right now. What I'm hoping to do is get a bunch of people to do readings of the different sections of the Zettel. Now, with that, and preferably grab your video camera, your webcam, your phone. Doesn't matter what quality. Is asking that everyone do a video of themselves reading part of the Zettel. Right now, at first what I'm hoping to do is get there are about 25 different parts to be read, and I'm hoping to get one person per part. That being said, if we fill up those parts, I'm more than happy to have multiple people read the parts more than once, and we can kind of intercut them together. I'm hoping to do this mega super cut of the Zettel. It should be a lot of fun, and I am posting the link in the YouTube posting the link to sign up sheet. So how it's set up is there's a spreadsheet. So you go to the spreadsheet, and it'll have like little sign up space. And then what I need you to do when you're done, I'll give you the link, and then I need you to go to Wiktenauer, and I'll have those links for you in just a second. Then you go to Wiktenauer, record yourself doing the Zettel. So hold on one second. So what I need you to do is then if you, for this reading, have folks then go to then go to this link, record yourself reading the section in English and in German. And then what gets to happen? Oops. I went over German for the section. English and German. Hold on 1 second. It won't let me post this thing in here. Okay. Nope, still not. All right. So there we go. There's that. So that link is the link to the text itself. So you can go ahead and go there. And let's see. And then when you're done reading, let me just grab the link to the form itself. Then submit it here. So again, looking for folks to read the Zettel, so sign up on the spreadsheet, and then record yourself using those translations. Don't care what the quality is, just on your phone, webcam, etc. If you have a professional recording studio, go for it. I'm not going to stop you. Oh, thank you, Joe. Thanks for boosting the numbers. I appreciate it. Hopefully one day we will be monetized and I can start making entire pennies for doing this. So once you've recorded the section, go ahead and use that Google form, which is the last of the 3 links I posted up top there, to send the file over, and then I'll do a fun super cut. Extra credit if you sing it. It's been hard, I know, for me personally to stay active, especially given the fact that I live in a studio apartment and the weather has been really trash. So any hopes of going to parks sometimes is not really an option, especially if I want to do any type of HEMA work. I don't want to bring even aluminum things out, or even rattan sticks, even though those probably survive a little easier in the rain. To practice. So I've been trying to do a couple things. As Dina mentioned, the bike rides. I have a bike now, and I've been taking that bike out as much as I can for got some really good cardio going up hills today. I'm just so not used to it. The mask and everything, restricting airflow, oxygen flow. I've been finding a lot of interesting, or at least I should say, I've been finding a lot of solace in doing some of the Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies workouts. Maybe because I remember the days of those circulating around the VHS tapes, but also because they're just silly and fun and get me moving. And I think that's a big part of it, is that we forget a lot of times how much we're sitting or standing still, and we just need something to get us fired up. And I think one of the biggest hacks, mental hack that we can do, is even if we're not feeling like moving, forcing ourselves to do anything can kind of then make us think about, I don't really want to be just kind of bopping to the oldies or something. I'm going to put on this other dance video that I really enjoyed, some Pilates, or finding something. And so I usually go to Richard Simmons because I think he's hilarious and fun. Leanne, I'm not familiar with Blink. What is the Blink app? Is that like the gym, Blink Gym, or... I think also there's a lot of places are putting out, a lot of YouTube personalities are putting out workout videos. One of the things that I'm also trying to do is on Fridays we are doing online Zoom classes. I'm trying to find a way to also stream them live to the Discord. I'm getting very, very close to fixing some of finding a patch for some of the technological limitations, and so what I'm hoping to start doing is airing that on Zoom, live on Zoom on Fridays, as well as the Discord. I don't want to move these AMAs just yet. I don't want to move these AMAs to Zoom simply because I don't think that's the right forum, and I think that it just becomes very. I think we'd be interfering with another class at this time anyway, and there's only going to be one class happening at the same time. Let's see. So yeah, so that's just like some schedule stuff to watch out for. Um, I am trying to make all the stuff available as many platforms as I can. And also for those of you who've subscribed to the Sword Class Online NYC Online, the teachable materials, I'm working on more materials. I have been writing frantically the next kind of chapter, and I'm hoping to get into that studio this week and start filming some more things. It might be difficult without other fencing partners, etc. I think I might be able to wrangle some locals, or I know Dina, you said that you might be able to bike in from Astoria tomorrow. But we'll work it out. I still don't know what exact day. But anyway, sorry, rambling. It's been a very long day. A lot of working out today. It's been great. My watch, my weird, funny smartwatch is very happy with me. Did 45-minute power yoga. Oh, how is the yoga going? If you haven't done it in a while, it's got to be. Was it simple? Is it kind of like simple return to like the mindful, like the motions and everything else? We're going to be doing some yoga next week, so just out there. Kat was kind enough to do a little intro to yoga. That is a yoga, a set of yoga poses that she does to help her before she does longsword and after she does longsword to help her kind of cool down. The video's just not ready yet. So there's that. Right. Trying to think. There was another little. There was something else, and it eludes me. Oh yeah, I guess the other part is concerning class things. I'm looking for feedback from folks too. If you would like Tuesdays to also contain a physical component, Fridays. This past Friday, I tried to blend theory with the workout, and I think a lot of the feedback I actually got from 100% of the participants was essentially everyone was that it much preferred the online workout instead of just a sit down kind of lecture piece. And so I'm thinking about I'm thinking about taking the Tuesdays and kind of dividing it into two parts. Maybe we do some we do test cutting. I wish we could do test cutting. Oh my god. We do some warm up cuts and stretches and warm up cuts, and we can do maybe talk about a technique, or all kind of practice a certain technique as much as we can, and then maybe the second part, in the second 45-minute, half hour, 45 minutes, we make it an AMA. Let me know in the comments here on the Discord, now or later. Always feel free to reach out to me about how this stuff is going. I want to make sure to tailor it to make it. My objectives are to make it available to as many people as possible, as freely as possible, and also to make sure that I'm doing everyone some good. I want to make sure that's not just this AMA isn't just me blathering out to the world. I care that students are absorbing useful information or things they're interested in. Warm-up cuts and such would be nice. Okay, yeah. If people are interested, maybe we'll do that in a little bit then, because there were some questions in the AMA, or in the Discord regarding certain things, and I thought I should jump onto those. Hildo asked, as he put it, a provocative question. I see a lot of use for the left Unterhau, as you can make a cross against your opponent and then whine half sword against their face. But then, is the right Unterhau useful? This assumes a righty mirror right-left for the better 10%. Okay, I think that I think that the right Unterhau is very, very useful. I totally understand what Hilda was asking about, is because if I'm cutting from the right and my opponent is, say, doing an Oberhau or a variety of strikes from over here, you're not always going to be able to make a proper cross with or a cross that endangers your opponent. But also at the same time, one of the things, let's see, righty versus, okay. Oh, also Hilda was asking about righty versus righty, mostly. Okay, so the way that first of all, I think the right underhow, it's another way of just understanding the cuts, and I think one of the other things that we need to do is also kind of do away with our general kind of notion of like what a like Unterhau technically is, right? So when it comes to Unterhau, we have our very kind of basic traditional Unterhau where we begin and say like Nebenhut and we cut. I think this is helpful because it's another physical attribute you'll have, but also because this is also Unterhau. This is also Unterhau. Anything from below, and I think there are a lot of uses for this. And also, tactically, one of the nice things about Unterhau is that it can be used in a, say, like a method to kind of draw people in, right? So one of the first techniques of my teacher with the longsword, or one of my teachers has with the longsword and the messer as well, is that you stand in the right Nebenhut, and it's really hard because my camera's a little too high. Let me see if I can lower this here so we can see the Neben. I might have to change the focus. All right, well, now you get to see all my laundry. Congratulations, everybody. All right. So, one of the things that anyone who's taken my classes on kind of the Winslow RU knows that I believe it's like one of the first techniques that you learn is you stand in this Nebenhut and then you cut while taking a step backwards, or you cut while taking an offline step. Now, part of this is because I'm wanting my opponent to come in and strike me, or I'm offering my upper target, like my upper regions as target, right? And then removing that target while cutting Unterhau, or from here, doing Oberhau from Nebenhut. I do think that Unterhau is valuable for that reason, as in like a tactical thing, and even though you're not, say, creating a cross that you can then like do an overbind and kind of like work from there, I do feel as though you can use this Unterhau, the more traditional Unterhau as we know it, one from Nebenhut, so to speak, from a like I said, tactical perspective, but also from the perspective of from the idea that we also maybe need to change how we completely analyze Unterhau, because I can cut Unterhau from top. Right? So, Unterhau. Cut it from Sparkfest. This is actually, if you've ever fought Tristan, this is something that the short Unterhau. But you can do, like, that motion is good for a lot of things. Yeah, that's what I got there. I personally use the Unterhau a lot, so. Let's see. There was another question. Where was it? Lou says that the ox should be taken. Okay, so Sam asks. Lou says the ox should be taken with the long edge facing you. Woo! So, long edge facing you. Yep. Does that mean we should be thumbing the blade under while keeping the flat up? This, yeah. I think so. Basically, I think what Lev is asking for, something like that. I'd agree, because I think we don't want to do this when we're in ox, because that's going to put you at a disadvantage for a lot of things. You don't want to do this for a number of reasons. as we know that if you do have your cross guard kind of, I know this is a messer, so I'm a little cheating here, but then the people, this gives like space to strike. So I also think that as long as it's not, as long as your the long edge is generally facing you, I never say to keep it flat because I think that offers top of the hand too much. I always say keep it at a bit of an angle. See, it's still facing me, and I think that this is kind of one of those situations where we have to look at both the practical translation of what the thing is saying, what the book is saying, but also one of the things we also need to think about is the concept and the greater practicality of what they're offering, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of stuff in, like, even Udalev's like, okay, from the shoulder, okay, but they don't define what that means. So if we're gonna do it literally, a lot of folks think it's this, from the shoulder, cut from the shoulder, or this. I mean, this is probably closer to what they're actually asking you to do, or this. I mean, this probably makes a little more sense, right? Because, you know, but now, all right, I'm gonna keep that in from the shoulder. So yeah, so the idea of things like, oh, point your, don't be too literal. I mean, there's some things that need to be, that's the fine part, right? Is like some like where are the things literal, and when is their ability to communicate in writing a physical action not necessarily perfect for a direct translation? You know, so it's like in this case, the long edge is still kind of facing me, and you know, I kind of prefer either this or this because the way you're angling, say, the cross guard, don't like that, but it's directly facing me. But this is a pretty good ox, because it also allows. What I also like about having this thumbing the blade is that it allows for this parry against the overhow, or even a middle how for hanging. So you can hang, so this hanging, and then easily hang here. So again, it's another one of the many reasons why I like the Udalev materials. Let's see what else we got. From a crossing, which means when your swords come to meet, when you go for someone's face, when would you use cross guard or versus the pommel to attack them? There's a hello question. I think I would think the pommel to take out teeth as a final act, as final action. Quellins, if you plan to move past the person, maybe throw them. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. I'm assuming you don't mean in fencing, because in fencing we're not allowed to do this kind of martial art work. I think this, and if you're at the sword and coming in with the Quellins or the pommel, I mean, I guess it depends on how much blunt force trauma you want to apply. Like, you're definitely going to break someone's teeth if you use the pommel in their face, or you're going to break their nose. If you use the Quellins, it's almost more like you're kind of really trying to kill them in a bigger way. Like, because this is going to, like, when you impact, it's going to be more concise. Well, but I don't know. I'm not a doctor. We'll ask Dr. Jim or someone about that kind of impact stuff. I mean, to be fair, the practical question is, if you are fencing someone, you do not use the cross guard. If you use the pommel, yeah, you're trying to, you know, definitely trying to damage their, you know, I mean, A, it's points in a tournament. B, yeah, I think you're trying to do more blunt force trauma. Well, this is more concise. I mean, I guess it also depends on what your opponent is wearing on their face. Like, if they're not wearing anything, it does, you know, hit them, just hit them. I honestly don't think that one would have to be at a very particularly high level of um, adrenaline management and just kind of like mind like under control while they were in these type of exchanges, simply because when you're in a sword fight, the adrenaline is so high, and then especially if you're at close distance, cross a sword, now you're close enough to like try to push in a pommel or try to do some kind of like strike something else. I just think that that's maybe splitting hairs, splitting faces at that point. Let's see. Alright, so those are the questions that I got off of. Okay, hold on, I'm going to scroll back here because there's some questions. Is the Sword Class NYC online stuff available on the website, or do you talk about the Instagram live things? Leanne, the Sword Class NYC online stuff, they have a link to it on their website. I think it's swordclassnyconline.teachable.com, I think. But I believe there is a link to it on their website. If not, I will check, and I will send you the... Actually, I can do that right now through the power of the internet. Let's see. Okay, I'm posting that here. Okay, so I've posted the link for Sword Class NYC there. Friday. Okay. Do we already have an AMA component? Another thing we could do is dig more directly into the sources. That would be interesting. I'm really hoping to dig into, like, start kind of taping recording exchanges of the interpretations of Udalev, and start kind of looking down some of my tinfoil hat theories, because the more I've been kind of getting into a lot of this stuff, the more I'm kind of recontextualizing what certain vocabulary means, if that makes sense. Just in terms of what do they mean by hewing and rosettes, and just kind of refining it. And I'm finding that a lot of it does fit more into maybe it fits more into kind of the fencing that certain types of more contemporary fencing than we might think it does, but maybe a slightly more violent version. One of the things I don't want to fall into is kind of reverse engineering something in a way that isn't correct. And by that I mean assuming that because I have an end product that I de-evolve the end product until it's this other thing. But I think it is interesting to look at the idea that the neighborhood is quite loud. At the moment. I'm hoping that they don't start another block party. One of the really fascinating things that like Hilda and I talk frequently about is like kind of recontextualizing what does it mean for the art, or for kind of say like the distance, the art of the distance, and how a lot of that has to do with maybe a lot more of it has to do for setting up for thrust or a smaller cut, it's experimenting, and it can be hard to, because I don't want to, I'm unable to like rewrite a program, but I think it's interesting to explore. And also one of the other things I'm hoping to do is create, say, like a new foundational. This is something I'm working on for the Teachable thing too. Is a foundational series of fencing that is kind of, it's designed for multiple levels of folks. So it's for both beginners. There are drills. There's exercises and drills for beginners as well as for more seniors, students. And one of the ideas that one of the goals is to approach fencing and break it down, the KDF fencing, and break it down into more core components and start talking about, say, looking at them, looking at the core components of fencing as well as the techniques, and kind of examining them in a different way and trying to superimpose them all together and see what that relationship is like. So it's going to be a lot of index cards and red string, so it's going to be a good time. Let's see. That being said, does anyone have any specific questions? I don't have a whole lot of material planned specifically. I was hoping to just make this today more of a general Q&A. I'm probably going to pour myself a drink in a little bit. But I would like to answer any longsword or messer. Like, I know I don't want the messer kids, the messer folk, to I might have to close this window because keeps getting louder. I don't want the messer folk to feel like you're getting left out, and I feel as though we don't really get to talk about that kind of theory as much. We did a little bit on Friday, which was fun, and I really enjoy it when we get to talk about that stuff. What's on all your minds? What's going on? How can I prepare? What can I do for next week, this Friday and next week, to make these really work for you? Current Crumphow feelings. Oh God, the Crumphow. Oh my God, Crumphow. It's always Crumphow. I'm gonna make a graphic for that where I'm just gonna hit a button and it's gonna be like, it's always Crumphow. Let's see. So, my thoughts on the Crumphow. I think the idea of treating it like a canonic, like the cut as we currently do, there's nothing wrong with that, because that's actually a really good deployment of that technique. As I think also another way to think about it is what does it look like to cut Crumphow, say, from Spreckfenster? Because it says you should be able to perform all of the cuts from the Spreckfenster. Okay. Crumphow. Now that's starting to look like Ox to me. And so it becomes I think it becomes really interesting because it's still doing a cut, and I'm still cutting over the hands, but and still kind of creating a cross with my sword from the long point and doing the thing. But also, if you think about it in the context of distance, it's really hard for me. I need like a dummy that can hold a sword or something. If you start thinking about this as, say, something you do out of distance, it starts looking like a parry, right? And again, especially if you are you can crump against the Yoberhau. Okay, so yes, I can do like a slapping motion, winding the sword. One of the other things that I can do, this looks familiar, and then, so yeah, I'm also thinking that like Crumphow is, what if you, so for those who aren't in the know, or were not there for the, say, tinfoil hat class, there was the idea that also, that says, okay, when the person's in left ox, so it's this ox kind of like right at your face, one of the ideas might also be to enter ox, and that kind of use that to hard parry down either their ox or kind of cut over it, and then schnappen over it, or even boom and then cutting in. So it's more along the lines of these actions, like what the text is asking you to do. Okay, here are these physical things, and then what we kind of extrapolate from our kind of basic core, loose understanding of what they're asking us to do. One of the things, again, that is coming, that as I'm going through all this fencing stuff, is a lot of the hues start really looking like ways to transition between the guards, move between the guards, and what does that mean for the fencing techniques itself and their application. More things to play with once we can all kind of hang out and play together. Yeah, so Krumpau, it's always Krumpau. I think I gave myself a metal splinter. Great. No, as long as it's not the Tommy splinters. Let's see. Maybe do Josh's succession looking at sources. Pick a section of source text discussion. Yeah, we can do that. We can do that as well. Because I think it's easier to kind of talk about some of that stuff. It is a little difficult. It is a little bit hard to do some of this stuff without someone else here, but I'll see what I can do. Feelings about Zwerch. The same as Krumpau. Like, I feel as though there's a lot of again, it's like it still feels like a cut to a certain degree, but also there's an element in which I feel like there's an element of deployment of the sword to a fencing position, or as a response to someone else's action. Let's see. What else we got? What other? What else y'all got for me tonight? Yeah, I mean, like, I think we could easily go through a lot of sections of the glosses, and kind of one thing that I've been kind of wanting to work on is try to compare different eras and different era comparison of certain techniques. Like, how does the Meyer Zwerchhau look compared to the Udalev versus Le Kukne or something, which I think is always interesting. We got another question. Just to look at like the evolution of techniques and kind of see if there are where the overlap is and what changes and maybe why. Zwerch from Messer, so I entrust how since the short edge is blunt. That's a good question. So for folks who don't know regarding the Messer, you have a sharp edge, and you have a dull, and you have a flat edge, and then you have only a little bit of sharp there. And so for something like the Zwerchhau and Trusthau for Messer, you're basically slapping them in the face, right? So I can imagine one of two things. One is that you are hoping to cut them with, say, like that small sharp part, that small little bit of your Messer that is sharp, or it is a transition to a ward to help you create this true cross. To help you create this cross that you can then move in for either duplirin or a mutirin type work, to kind of send you to other work. So, and yeah, like also like Dina said, it's really good for setting up like into the thrust, into the other work. It's a lot. A lot of the hues to me seem like they're established, like these specialty cuts are supposed to be designed as like to operate in the Nach, maybe. I don't know. Maybe. Or to help you work in the Nach, but that's experimentation for another time. I think a lot of things with the Messer, because yeah, I mean, I once saw a video where people talked about how this Zwerchhau should be like this, and I'm like, oh, there is no way that this is anything other than just if you try to do this really flat thing and start opening up with these fingers and bending your wrist, it's gonna have a bad time. This Verkow? Oh. Yeah, I mean, the hand ends up kind of like this. And also, like, so, I mean, you can still thumb the blade either way. Because, yeah. And it's also, what's interesting is you start doing Zwerkhow from Lübensland, you're kind of doing these, kind of into these hangings. Let's see. The name position guards we know simply as the particular way to describe them in writing, as opposed to give them special importance in their own right, and that most of you. Yeah. Dr. Josh says, I tend to think many of the named positions / guards we know were named simply to have a particular way to describe them in writing, as opposed to giving them special importance in their own right, and that most of them are either intermediate transitionary positions during a cut or start aiming positions of a cut. Case in point, Einhorn. Does anyone else think this? I agree. I completely agree. I also think that it's also, I think part of the reason there are very, very specific numbered things in the Zettel is because there is an attempt to apply either a certain type of numerology or some kind of like the book Sword, Science, and Society talk a lot about having to like trying to take the modern science of the time, a modern scientific argument to say, hey, the sword fencing is a science and or an art science, like a science, and this is why. In using a classical argument, and a lot of the numbers either have either some type of religious overtone or some type of something that helps it kind of fit into this other way of thinking. Because if you look at, I think we just talked about this a couple weeks ago, the idea of common fencing, not in terms of the vulgar form of fencing, but the idea that the larger corpus of fencing. There are, and it's also where like a lot of if you look at the Meyer stuff, there's just like all these lists, and not just Meyer, but like a lot of these different sources. There's all these different names for all these different things. It's because it all comes from a larger corpus of fencing. And the Lichtenauer stuff was an attempt at thinning the herd, making it less, and just kind of saying, oh, well, all of these things can fit within this context of the fencing. And so having, say, like there are 4 guards until there's magically a 5th one at the very end of the book. The Sprechfenster, but then other guards are also mentioned, like Schrankhut's mentioned, all these other things. So I find that yes, I agree with what Josh is saying. I also in a mode right now where I'm very much trying to communicate the difference between guards and wards, and also the idea that the text goes to great length in certain areas to talk about how these are also kind of ways, like the different guards are also different ways to describe, say, to describe different regions, right? Like, oh, well, Flug is a guard, but it's also the lower opening, so it's like Flug, Ox. okay, does that make this like Vomtag, like from the day, like also Vomtag from the roof of the day? So anything kind of like above, and then Alber or Olber. There's a lot of argument that like it's not like more recently like some arguments that like Alber is not supposed to be the fool, but it's supposed to be Olber. Of this like the idea the translation we should be leaning towards is the weighted parry, and then you have this idea of from the day, like that which descends from the sky, and then that which is like rises from like that which is heavy and below. Yeah, rise, and so you have like this high and low concept, and then this left and right, and uh, and I'm really getting into my red string stuff here, but yeah, I'll ask for it. But and so. These are examples, like, oh, my sword is in Aox here, right? And what are the properties of those things? Also, you can do a lot of that's a whole other conversation. But I think there is an esoteric, yeah. And then if you look at the differences, like the Germans use yes, as above, so below. Exactly, Josh. It's I think that's. I think we have to put our minds into a certain degree into the time period of what their interpretation of what art and science meant, and that's really hard because we are I mean, I know that there were non-theological thinkers at the time, but like our lens is very different now, and also, yeah, I mean, Dina makes a really good point. Sounds like very geometrical. I'd be interested to see when did the idea of applying geometry to fencing really start taking off. When did geometry become more common in say those types of circles? When would that information be available to the people in those circles? Something else on that was the difference between ward and like posture. Like again, I can stand and flug, but I'm not going to parry this way, right? If I'm going to do a parry, the thrust like a parry, it's going to be or right, making sure to extending arms, meeting the sword, like changing the space. So it's I've come to kind of refer to the Lega as like the postures, or like the postures of engagement, in the same way that like it is something that you pass into and through in order to fence. Meanwhile, warding is it's an action, right? It's something you do to deflect. And I think a lot of the problems with some of the interpretations we have is that we kind of tend to think of the postures as different. The postures as the wards, or like, oh, you ward with ox, so now you just use ox, but in Ansetzen, but what is or Absetzen, etc. I mean, the guards, I think, like, we've all been in that position where sometimes we just need to go to Vomtag. Like, I think it's okay to be in the guards. But it's like, we have to think about the application of our guards. There was Josh comments, if there was a geometrical component in the culture of fencing historically, perhaps it had something to do with the significance of geometry and medieval mysticism. I have often thought about this, and like about the idea of like numerology was really. I think there was like an interest in like numerology and all sorts of different things. And like if you look at a lot of these fex books, they have alchemy sections, which maybe people more believed in at the time, but they have a lot of magic in them. And and so a lot of magic and not a whole lot of religion. There's some religion. There's like there's prayers, but it's almost more like the kind of ones that lead over to like the more magic-y kind of things. And I think that there's a lot of these numbering systems have a lot. The numberings do have a lot to do with, say, again, a religious context, a classical argument, and or like some form of. I do kind of think the mysticism, like the bells maybe rung a little bit. Something that I wish I had access to. I might know a professor, but I don't know if he's still alive. But it's something that we should definitely like look into. So if anyone knows any experts in medieval religion or medieval mysticism, that would be cool. I know there was someone at Brown, Matheson, but I think he was mostly folklore. But that might be worth it too. I did not go to Brown. I know people who went to Brown, and this professor is he's a witch. Witch studying, like he's very into the occult, like studying the occult, like I don't want to say like a witch believer, but like or I'm sorry, a believer. Oh my god, my brain. A believer in witches and such, but like has written phenomenal works on studying like witchcraft and like its practical application. In its practical applications in like how humans have practically applied magic throughout the ages. Let's see. All right, it is 7:50. I think it is, unless people have any other direct questions, I think it is a good time for us to pour ourselves a drink. Oh, actually, yeah, medieval person at Fordham, that might be good too. I know that there's sometimes, definitely ask around. And also, it would be interesting also to kind of dive into the text and kind of write out the numbers, kind of write everything down, kind of how they fall. Like, oh, there's 4 guards, but there's really 5. The 5th one is revealed to you. Actually, Christian Tobler has a really interesting. Is that paper still around? Someone took my copy, or my copy is somewhere. Christian Tobler wrote about like how each of the guards has something to do with one of the early beliefs and elements, and how Long Point was kind of like the fifth element, and that sort of thing. So that might be. I should try to dig up that essay if there's a PDF of it or kicking around on the internet. One other thing about the guards and such is that what is interesting is if you go to any given guard and you start transitioning between that guard to other guards, you notice that the windings start happening, right? And the same thing, and I challenge everyone to do this as well. Start transition between the different guards, and also try to do all the cuts from every guard, right? I think that is interesting as well. So hit me with more questions. While I wait for those questions, I'm going to you can all see what I'm doing. I'm not gonna give you the voice. I'm just gonna show it not well. Ah. All right. Let's see. People were asking about sword books. I think I mentioned this last time during reading, but I definitely still. Oh yeah, wait, just a second. So, oh wait, working on keeping my ox very high and structured. I often find. That is a frequent problem with ox. I think because a lot of there's this idea that ox needs to be this very offensive thing, and so one again, especially one of the tricks that I've been finding that really help with ox is if I actually when I need to use it as a ward is instead of trying to force my arms up higher, to drop down my body. It can be a little harder with the mask because the mask gives a little resistance, and I think that it's a pretty good. But it was a technique that I think Tim Kaufman told me about, and it has helped me use ox efficiently, or at least be able to pull off like a parry with the ox. So, the two books I read the other week, I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, read from this book. This is The Hustler, Swordplay, and the Art of Tactical Thinking. This is the second book Maya has put out, and it has a lot more to do with like the psychological elements and kind of the kind of oh boy, that's graphic. Oh, there's like one really graphic image here. I was not ready for that. But just kind of talking about just mentality, but then also like mentality of violence and such. But also but the psychology of fighting, and I think that's really really great. And also kind of the breakdown of why do certain techniques work. This book is one of my favorite books on martial arts. Hildo, thank you very much. And it's it has a lot of great drills in it, which we've been doing and will continue to do once we're back in the space. There's not a whole lot of individual solo drills, but I can try to recommend some stuff. She really breaks down fencing and fighting with a sword to very, very core elements of it, and I'm a big proponent of that. Let's see. I think about being ready to take a blow from above. Yeah, you know, again, shorter fences, smaller fencers, we always, yeah, I mean, I think that's the best thing you could do. Like, it's one thing to do it in theory. The other thing is, like, it's hard to put it into practice, and we need another person there for that. It's got to do it 100,000, like 10,000 times before it's acceptable. And you know, I personally almost 90% of the time assume that a cut will come from above against me, especially if my opponent's taller than me, simply because they're gonna try to use their reach. You can have, yeah. I'm not gonna devolve into my asymmetrical rants again. Now, if folks want, I can talk a little bit about how many folks were not able to take the class on Friday. I assume quite. There's 11 people here, which is quite a number of people, more than that were in class. So let me see if I have my. I don't know how if I can make this work, but let me see if I can do that. Let's see. So, please hold while this tries to open a document. I mean, if people are interested, I could kind of give my 1.5 or 1.1 version of the lecture that that I gave on Friday regarding about like about sport. Like, what does it mean to be a sport versus martial art versus combative sport slash self-defense, which I think is it's a question that comes up a lot. And okay. Leanne, this is something I'm actually really interested in, Leanne, in what you're talking about. I would love if you could on the Discord send me more notes, and this is definitely something I would love to work on and kind of like work through. And I can try to come up with some drills and such, because this is something I have a problem with too, and I just kind of I would love to hear more specifically, like just break it down into what is the experience, the physical experience that is happening, and is there a particular situation that it's occurring in, and like how is it, and then like your the feelings about it would be super helpful, and then we can work on that. Tybee, yes, I love this book. I've actually had some correspondence with. I've been trying to get her to come do a New York workshop. Maybe I can. Once the pandemic is over, I can try to convince her to do some work with us. I also have her videos, which maybe in future sessions we'll do together, because I think there are some drills in there we can maybe do via the Discord or the YouTubes. So we have just about half hour. I mean, like, one of my goals for 2020 before in the before times was that I actually wanted to get a bunch of people, set up a bunch of workshops. Maya was hopefully one of them. I was hoping to try to get the gentleman, one of the gentlemen who do the Haitian Machete classes to come in. But again, that's something that hopefully, when this is all safely, like once we're the current crazy times pass, people will be open to traveling again. So probably at the earliest fall. But we'll see how things go, right? At the very least, yeah, we'll figure it out. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so since there was, let me see if I can do a screen share on here. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm using software that I'm only I know the cores of. Like, I'm more used to doing, as folks know, in my professional life, I am a film and television editor, but I am not so used to live broadcast as this, as you've seen through the many trial and error. So I am not as familiar with all this live streaming technology. It's actually a bit, to be really honest, it's been pretty cool. There's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of fun toys to play with. I'm not always exactly sure. All right. what will work. But, alright. So, let me queue this up. Please hold. If it crashes, I promise I'll be right back. But let's see. I think there is an option for this. I apologize again for not having this all kind of set up. Alright. Alright. Alright, so what I'm trying to do here is just trying to get a, my PowerPoint here, my slideshow, what do they call them, a deck? To show up on my screen. So I apologize. Alright, I think I figured it out. Slide deck. Yeah, okay. I mean, my overhead projection that's on my computer. Alright, let me see. Those are my notes. I don't want notes. Oh, too much on my face. I think if I put this... Alright, hold on to your butts. Okay. Are we still rolling? Alright. Yeah, slide deck. I'm not very good with the corporate-y stuff, so I apologize. Alright, alright. Alright, I think I got it. So please hold. I'm going to do this. And then we're going to do that. And then we're going to do that. We're going to create new. Capture. It's going to be that. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna try one more thing. If not, well, um, joke's on us. Okay. Wait, what? Alright, one last thing. Uh-oh, I'm freezing up here. Oh, now it's completely frozen. Okay. Well, that's no good. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Yes. Okay. Let's try this. All right, can you hear me now? Okay, we can hear you, but camera freeze. Okay, that should be fixed in just a second. Okay, good. Okay, yeah. Sorry about all this technical stuff, everyone. I was not expecting to do this, but it'll be hopefully. Hopefully fixed. All right, can you at least hear me now? Okay, cool. All right, close enough. All right, so essentially, this is all kind of coming from a question that a bunch of the newer students asked me, like, what is it exactly we are doing here? And I don't mean just in terms of, you know, in terms of, say, being like a bunch of nerds and hanging out and playing with swords, or a drinking club with a sword problem that we so commonly refer to ourselves as. But it's like, what are we reenacting? What are we doing? And that's kind of when I go off on my, oh, well, it's this historical thing and the weird judicial dueling. And so I thought it would be good to maybe sit down and take a minute and kind of put together this kind of put together some thoughts on it and try to break it down like we do whenever we try to communicate any idea, right? And so what I've come up with is essentially, what is fencing? The free play fencing we do in longsword is a martial sport based on the historical European practice of judicial dueling. What the hell does that mean, right? So a couple things to unpack there are, free play fencing is different than when we say are doing our pieces or our kata practice, right? Or pair technique. A lot of what we do, kind of in it's fine. Slides are meant to come back and forth. A lot of what we do kind of falls into a couple different categories, right? We do practice cutting. We do, and things that we saw like long point, right? We do practice cutting, we do paired technique, and then we do free fencing, our sparring kind of components, right? And so, I guess the question that I get frequently asked is, or like, it's really clear when we're doing test cutting, tamashigiri. I mean, I think people are, like, again, make it into a sport, which is fine. But it's very easy to kind of, again, a lot of feelings and things wrapped up in that. That's another conversation. And then when we're doing paired techniques, it's all about, okay, I do A, my partner does B, then I do C, and it's this building of a pattern, right? It's this sword dance, this story that's being told, right? The kata in the Eastern forms that I do, form that I do is very much about telling a story, and I think we get a little bit of that with paired techniques, and I think that there are some kind of, also we're developing some shtick, some technique, or some paired pieces for practice in longsword as well. But then there's this fencing thing, and that fencing thing often, that free fencing thing gets often caught up in this argument that is just endless on the internet, just endless flame wars and trolling of martial art versus sport, and the people, there's a group of people that get like, oh, this is sport, oh, it's martial art, and everyone's whining and like trying to like lift their glasses up in their face and like, well, actually, each other, and it's so yeah. So the biggest question that I think so I wanted to do, especially for newer students or students that are looking to kind of understand part of what, kind of to zoom out a little bit and kind of look at it from a non-Facebook perspective. So I've kind of put together this. Right? The question that we are asking, is this a sport? Is it a martial art? Is it self-defense? And I think what we have, in order to kind of figure these things out, we have to start asking ourselves, what do these things mean? What is a sport? What is a martial art? And what is self-defense? I think that, all right, and so, like anything, we can only define, definition comes through, meaning. And so I think a lot of all these things kind of come down to very specifically one very specific thing, all right? Whether we're talking about sports, martial arts, or self-defense, all kind of come down to levels of consent. All right. So, what do I mean by levels of consent? What I mean is that when we are, let's take a look at the sparring in general, right? Whether you're playing for points or you're playing just kind of about to practice, fencing generally boils down into to one rule, right? It's hit the other person without being struck yourself. We talked a little bit about that last week with Maya's book, about how the best outcome you can hope for is that you've struck the other person and you haven't been struck or damaged in any way, and just the asymmetry that is sometimes involved in that. But when you were anytime you are entering, or anytime you participate in fencing, or in most sports, you are entering a level of consensual violence. You've actively agreed to compete with weapon simulators with another human being. We are here to test our abilities of technique and control, and part of that is making sure that a fencing match does not for me at least, part of that is to make sure that a fencing match does not degrade into a violent free-for-all. It's not open war. A lot of the sparring that we do is a game. It's a touch tag game. Because none of the majority of the mechanics that are required to treat it as a true self-defense, there is a strong lack. There's a lack of our ability to train with those mechanics, like actual thrusts, etc., etc. Wow, sorry. Loud neighborhood tonight. Now I completely lost my train of thought. So yeah, the idea that sparring is a game. Now during that game, you might be testing out technique, right? That is a different. You might enter that sparring situation where you're like, I'm only going to do Zorhao, I'm only going to do Krumpao. Try to set it up and da-da-da. You're still doing a game, right? Because we're not actively trying to kind of hurt the other person, right? So kind of the thing that I'm trying to like communicate, especially with younger, hungry, or I should just say greener, hungry fencers, is the fact that like is to really hammer home the idea that our sword simulators can be dangerous. They are there to simulate the use of a actual weapon. This is all rooted in some form of murder, and they are essentially a 3-pound crowbar fashioned into the shape of a sword. So we must learn control and sportsmanship, and that's really what like tournaments are supposed to kind of exhibit, right? Control, technique, and sportsmanship. Now, let's talk a little bit about like what defines a sport versus martial art versus self-defense. Really kind of like what truly defines the HEMA falls a little bit into all these categories because it's got little bits of all of it in there, right? And all of this is like, again, the subject of much debate, constant flame wars on the internet. All three are competitive, more on that in a second, involve direct contact with opponents, and all have varying degrees of violence and danger when participated in, right? That's a sport, martial art, self-defense. Competitive, contact, violence, danger. And as I said earlier, my opinion is that all three categories are most divided by the issues of consent. Sports, for the most part, is the least dangerous of the three categories. The reason being that a consensus has been made regarding the context of the play. Context of the play. This is what we generally refer to as the rules, or like we're all supposed to follow the rules of a sport, of a game, right? There's an agreed upon framework that establishes the desired goal of the exchange, as well as the acceptable levels of aggressive competitive behavior to achieve those ends. Right. I mean, and again, that just isn't in HEMA. That's for, when you go to a game of baseball, there are certain you are expected to be competitive. You are expected to something just beeped at me. I don't know what that was. You're expected to be competitive. You're expected to sorry, things are beeping at me and I can't figure out what just beeped at me. You're expected to be competitive. You're expected to and you're allowed to interact, depending on the sport, with other people that are also competing in that sport with you, various degrees. Something like baseball, I think the most you're going to get is maybe a tag from someone, or maybe a high five when you do well. And then you have something like football, where there's certain types of tackling that are allowed and certain types that are not. You're not allowed to say grab the guy's mask and punch him and then grab the ball and then run in for a touchdown, right? So there's all these rules and all these context being put in place. So that's sports. They can have very violent sports, or more aggressively violent sports. And whoever donated the Ko-Fi, thank you very much. In martial arts, the rules get a little looser. There are still like competitive games. The goals are themselves of participating in a martial art like sport exchange. It's like there's still competition. There's still an agreed upon system being applied, be it longsword or wrestling or dagger or mixed weapons. There's a context for what's being presented. It's not a free for all. It's not anything goes. Like there's again a certain whereas most I have this written down, so please excuse me. But the range of acceptable consensual violence increases when we start adding in martial arts. Whereas most sports play it safe by design, the martial arts are more permissive of simulation of more dangerous interactions. Right, we're stabbing each other in ways that would be normally more violent, or we're simulating stabbing people, or simulating slashing people. let's see, martial arts is more permissive of simulation or dangerous interactions, but still within these exchanges there is a level of understanding between the opposing parties that responsibility will be taken to apply restraint and control to prevent serious injury. I mean, I've been waffled, I've been concussed. Accidents happen. Those two, I've seen appendages be broken. Like accidents do happen, and the martial arts do kind of set up a context for that. But still, there is, or should be, at least in my opinion, that there is should be mechanisms that kind of get in the way of that. With martial arts, it's an art where we are attempting to kind of go in and like present kind of, again, our art, our technique within this confines. Yes. And that kind of brings me to the last point of like, because there's this, and I'm not going to pick on any specific tournaments because I don't want to do that. I want to encourage everyone to go and participate at all of them. Okay. The idea that like everything, that there's this kind of no holds bar element to a lot of HEMA, a lot of martial sport. I think that might be maybe more true towards martial combat sports, like combat sports, MMA and that sort of thing. But I like to think that what we're doing is not that. I think that involves a very particular level of consent, in a similar way like boxing. Something that's very, very violent involves a very, very certain type of interaction. And so that kind of brings us to self-defense. This is something that is brought up a lot about in both cases, sport and martial arts. The primary link between those two things is positive consent. Self-defense is something that I've had to think a lot. I've been thinking a lot about lately. I personally, I don't know. I'm sure that many people have had to deal with. I hope that not everyone, but I know that folks have to deal with, people. The reality of, say, like the city or just life is that there is a chance in which you are going to have a violent interaction with another human being, and though the thing that make those interactions completely different than, say, like fencing, is the complete lack of consent, right? The complete lack of rules, the complete lack of consent versus rules versus objectives, etc., etc., etc. Right? There's no agreement on anything. You have a person that is attempting to violently assault you in some way or another, and you have to respond in a way that only, like, in which you are the only meaningful survivor of that interaction. So like, and that's why in many cases, like, self-defense training can be really often traumatic, because it involves training for situations that are the suspension of that consent. Your partner's not going to bow to you, or the person you're dealing with in a self-defense situation is not going to salute you and then try to fight you. They're most likely going to do the most inopportune attack they can. The thing that is most inopportune for you. Again, that's why these things are traumatic. Involves, like, training for self-defense involves some real serious stuff. All the rules are off, and you are training for situations in which your safety is not guaranteed. That being said, I think we can clearly say that while there are elements of self-defense in HEMA, I think that there are elements that we can carry over into that world, but we are not necessarily training for that. Simply because of, I think there is space for it, and I know some schools try to lean towards that more, or at least and there are some schools that teach both. But the fact that we are not actively trying to get our brains to do certain things or put our brains in really bad places that aren't within the context of sport. It's kind of proof of that. And so yeah, so that was just something that ultimately, and for me, that's why I try to prefer, like I like calling like HEMA or like longsword really falls in a historical European martial sport. I think that it comes from a place that's more historically sportive, the judicial dueling. I think there, even though there was some self-defense stuff in there, I think if we kind of look at who was participating in KDF and a lot of these things, and or who had access to written material or ability to read a lot of these written materials, kind of also spells out a lot of who and what this stuff was for. And so martial sport, from especially in modern context, longsword is like Messer and a lot of these things are martial sport because it is inherently, I think, more dangerous than say a normal sport to a certain degree. Simply because because it involves the simulation of more dangerous things, and the fact that there is not kind of like a universal safety protocol. That ends my rant. Thank you for Leanne for sharing this link. I'll definitely check this out. So yeah, so that is my my little kind of spiel on that. I'm open to like hearing what other people have to say. I'm not trying to incite more flame wars. I'm not trying to talk down about anything. It's just my interpretation of what's happening and how I like to approach teaching is trying to teach. We're here to play with swords. Yeah. Jeez. Yeah, so how's everyone out there doing? Is everyone still awake? Drinking, I hope? So, yeah, we started a little late, so... oh, yeah, yeah, it's... Leanne brings up a good point. I think about consensual violence as total body load over the lifetime. Yeah, you know this. I think another thing. Yeah, yeah. So if I agree, Leanne. That's why I personally have some thoughts about how, I honestly think we should be training more with rattan sticks, and then using the kind of, I think fetters need to be redesigned. I honestly think, for most part, we should not be training with the crowbars. I honestly think that we should be training with shinai with cross guards. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. I like I personally, would like to maintain as much use of my brain and body as possible for the duration of my, living existence on the planet. So I think about these things a lot too, Leanne. Especially, you know, especially folks who are older, probably. I know I definitely feel a lot of this more. I think the Purple Wooden Heart trainers are pretty good for training with. Part of I actually like it because they bite a little bit when you make contact with them, so you get a little more of that edge simulation. I think that they're not really good. You can't hit each other with them, I think, any more than you can hit each other with a fetter. They give a little more, they break a little more, that's good. I think the rattan's good because it really bends, it really gives. I think there's a good combination to be using there, and I think I personally would prefer if everyone had like a hand and a half, like an appropriate sized longsword. For some of us, that's a hand and a half, the 30-inch longsword or the full longsword, wooden trainers, and then like an appropriate sized rattan stick to train with. I think it decreases the cost of decreases the barrier of entry. The rat and sticks are like $17. We can group order them if people are interested. But I'm sure we can also get a deal on the wooden swords too if we get enough orders together. And like the wooden swords are like $60-$70 compared to like the $300-$400 or like even like the $250-$300. So I really this is something that I think we should all really consider, and because I think it would be good. um, I also agree the padded swords are somewhat better, but they're still capable of inflicted injury, of course. Yeah, that's padded swords are one of the ways I've been concussed. They are, again, okay, reconnection successful. Okay. Yeah, so with the, um, whatchamacallit, yeah, so I mean, I think also with the longswords, they have, I think a lot of people, again, I think a lot of the times with the wooden swords, there is like, again, people are getting swords that are too long. But that is, again, another soapbox that I will die on. So, but I think, yeah, again, that's just my opinion. I think it's something we should all kind of collectively talk about. But that being said, we're running a little late, so I am going to depart. Thank you everyone so much for putting up with my low energy tonight. Had a very, very long bike ride, and I did a lot of training this morning. I got a significant amount of like practice cutting in and some kata in as like the park was accessible, so that was really great. Thank you everyone so much for joining me, and thank you to everyone for all your support, and also the Ko-Fi donations, and some folks have sent art supplies too, which I really, really appreciate. And I'll look into these. Someone mentioned CG has feathers that are mini and small. I'll look into those. Yeah, and thank you again, everyone. Continue being good to each other. Thank you to everyone who's contributed to not only help supporting me continuing these things in the art, but also thank you for all your support of each other. It means the world to me when I see folks helping each other out. All right, it's Tuesday. It is drinking practice time. Cheers, everyone.